Hello everyone, this is Zeeebo and welcome to this Etheria restart video. So we are back again with our favorite video, which is the prioritization video. This time around, the SR unit prioritization. So this will be in the tier list format as usual, and I will break down the different tier ratings as well as the different units in discussion based off the current meta. So first of all, the tier list, right? Starting off, we have must train. So must train tier is basically units which you definitely need to train. I think everyone will eventually have to build one of these units up because like they are basically used a lot. They're used everywhere and they are really good. So Marvel is the representation because even though he got nerfed, he's still used everywhere, used in PvP. Really speedy unit, 1 debuff and then 1 silence, and then you pretty much win the game in your RTA side, at least based off the current meta. So that's why he's definitely a must train, because he's not just good for PvP, he's also insanely good for PvE contents as well, for the turn manipulation in general. So that's for Marvel. Highly recommend. We have units which I'll recommend you to build because number one, they are very good for what they do. Number two, they are very exclusive. Number three, they deliver good results in terms of the PvE to PvP transition. So Fungus is a good example for this one because first of all, if you're building up a DOT team, Fungus is the only, I think, 2 other units, okay, 3 units, because if you count Sania, Fungus and Obo, technically you have like 3 DOT units. So right now Fungus is one of the 3, and to be really honest, even without Sania in the team itself, Fungus as a damage dealer is pretty decent because he has a AoE DOT damage as well as speed down, so that is some speed control there, and he can do follow-up damage. So what you can do is you can build a lot of offensive stats on him and then have the other allies attack the opponent and then he follow-up attack onto the enemies itself. So pretty good damage dealer in my honest take, and very exclusive to DOT. So if you are building a DOT or if you plan to build a DOT team, you have to build him eventually. So that's why I highly recommend him if you sort of want a pretty decent DPS on the red color affinity side. So third one, we have the subjective tier. So subjective is basically unit which I think it's subjective to whether or not you need them, whether or not they are better substitutes in your account, and if you have sufficient resources. So one of the best example will be Sania. Sania used to be definitely a must train because I think she's broken in the healing compartment. Like she's able to sustain your whole team up, and she's able to just give so much sustain to keep you alive both in PvP and PvE that you definitely need to train her. But ever since she got nerfed, I think she's relatively subjective because her heal values are not as good as she used to be, and healers in terms of the PvE side is not a must, right? With her being downgraded in terms of power level, I think it's subjective because you can actually use Linglor in her place, and there are other better healers like Chucky, for example, right? Even you can even use Dorothy for that healer role. So that's why I think she's pretty subjective depending on whether or not you need her affinity, whether or not you have the resources, and if you want to train out a healer. So that's for the subjective role. Next, we have the PvP Centric. So these units, they are basically meant for PvP only. PvE wise, they might be able to see niche users, but most of the time these units are meant for RTA contents. So in the current stage of the game where RTA is still in the building up phase, where you're using your strongest PvE units in general, I think you can actually wait on them first because like, yeah, you don't want to waste your resource on just a PvP centric character as of the current meta. So that's why they are here. Okay, so Viper is the best example. This unit is very powerful in PvP if you use him to counter specific comps. So that's why he is a very PvP centric character, but outside of PvP, not that good for most of the PvE contents. So last but not least, we have the Nahhh tier. So yeah, like the name suggests, I don't recommend people investing in this unit, not even in the future, until like there's a specific niche for these units, because like they're just not very good and you have better options. So Kachi the Guard is one of the best example. He's a taunt, he's a tank that wants to soak up damage and then retaliate back, but he doesn't have a taunt, so not that good. So that's why he's here. So the next unit is definitely RC77. Like I've never seen anyone use this unit before. I personally am not very familiar with what he do. I think he does a speed debuff with some damage or something, and there's some sort of like additional follow-up damage if I remember correctly, but he's so like weak that I think, yeah, I can't be bothered to remember what he does exactly, so that's why he's here. So that's it for the examples as well as the explanation for the tier list. So without further ado, we'll just continue with the Nahhh category. And following RC77, the next unit is Makoto. So I think the tank role in this game is very niche, and not every content needs a tank. In fact, not every PvE teams need a tank, because like you can actually make up for the lack of tank with a sustain unit like a healer or a shielder, or just a turn manipulator to push the opponent back to give you more survival. So like Makoto's role in PvE is pretty weak, and PvP side I do think she has some potential, but then like I mentioned before, I think tank is a very niche role. It's not a must-have in most team setups, that you can make do without tanks in most cases. So for now, I'll put her in the Nahhh tier. Moving forward, if people start to sort of find PvP usage for her and make her really meta for PvP, maybe she'll go up to the PvP Centric tier. So that's for Makoto. Another unit which I don't recommend is Tsutomu. So Tsutomu has a very niche ability, which is heal block, but like, yeah, you don't actually even see a lot of healers around, so why would you need a heal block? So some people actually suggested the use of Tsutomu for the Dahlia boss to block out her heal, which I think is valid, but even then, what do you do after the anti-heal debuff goes off? Like, you still need to do damage, and Tsutomu as a unit is probably not a unit that people train, and you probably won't train like one anti-heal to just counter one boss. So that's why for now he's in the Nahhh category. Moving forward, let's say if there's a very heavy heal sustain meta instead of a speedy burst meta, then I think his anti-heal ability might come into play, and that's where he might go up to the PvP centric tier. So even for now, some might argue, hey, anti-heal might be good for PvP, but yeah, look at the PvP ladder, there's not a lot of healers right now, so yeah, he doesn't have the meta right now to fit in, so that's why he's here. Another unit which I kind of want to put here is actually the Wisher Dorothy. Oh wait, yeah, I'll say the Wisher Dorothy. Okay, so the reason for that is, I think the Wisher Dorothy as a turn supporter, as a crit buffer with life leech is pretty good, but I think crit rate buff you have Grey already, and you have a lot of amazing crit rate buff units in the SSR category, which are like top tier units that you should be going for. So like what she does as a buffer is kind of overshadowed by a lot of other better units. And at the same time, I think the turn manipulation, really good stuff, but yeah, you just have so many amazing turn manipulation unit, like the SSR units like Lily, like Mio, like even Chiaki does a better job in turn manipulation. So generally speaking, let's say if you need a turn manipulator, I think Dorothy is not a choice which I would suggest. So that's why she's in the Nahhh tier. So that's that. Kazuyo Kazami, or Kazami Kazuyo right here. So she does, I think, Dispel, does a little bit of turn control as well. And generally speaking, I think you can call her the Jack of all trades but master of none. But even for Jack of all trades, she doesn't do her job that well. So a little bit of everything, but nothing in particular. So like, yeah, you have better choices over her. So that's why she's here. Oboro. Oh, Obo. Sorry, she's not. No, this is Oboro. Yeah, like there's one guy called Obo. Obo is the DOT guy. Oboro right here is, I don't know, bleeding plus defense down. Like, why would you use her for that? Like, I guess there could be a niche in PvP, but I don't see it, at least based off the current meta, because she's not fast enough and she's not bursty enough. So like in terms of the PvE side, I have never seen anyone use her before as well. She's like pretty similar to RC7. The only reason why I remember what she does is because on my main account I actually got like 6 copies of her, so pretty sad about it. Like, but yeah, it is what it is. So that's with regards to Oboro right here. I think that's pretty much it. Like, I guess these are units which I wouldn't recommend at all, because like they don't actually see too much of a use to begin with. So that's that. Oh yeah, before I forget, the last unit I want to put on this tier is Doro. So this unit is a healer, which is pretty average. So healer is not a must, and as an average healer, you have free Linglua, you have other healers like Sanya as well as Chiaki. So yeah, nah, don't train her. Yeah, that's pretty much it. For the PvP side, let's continue with Viper once again. So this unit is not a unit which you see a lot. He has the ability to reduce damage from crit hits, and also the ability to counter attack on a second skill, and the ability to debuff the opponent. So generally more PvP centric, because that's where you can take more hits. you are able to counter attack, and that's where crit hit is actually the late game for PvP, because you realize that a lot of damage dealers will want to build like crit as well as speed, or just high attack with speed and then have a bit of crit buff in the team itself. So the ability to reduce damage from crit hit is actually really good for the PvP side of things in the late game. So that's for Viper. Right now, not a recommendation to train, but probably will see some use in PvP later on. So I'm going to put both the Rins here. So the Red Rin is a tanker with the ability to increase defense as well as shield the whole team, and also has the ability to redirect damage to herself by taunting their enemy and reducing their attack. So in a PvP setting, I think that's extremely helpful, because you will be able to reduce the damage output of the opponent and then press your damage onto them. So specifically for PvE, I think you can try to use her for Terramaton to soak up some damage to redirect the attacking hand to you, but in general, I think you have better options over her, and you probably won't train her specifically for Terramaton only. So like if you're training her, you can use her for Terramaton, but she's more PvP centric in my honest opinion. The next Rin here is the Speedy Rin. So this is the unit that gives speed down, deals a lot of damage based on speed, and has one of the faster speed for the SR units, which is good for PvP in general. So both versions of her, the red only demon over here is actually pretty good for PvP in general, but more for the late game side. They are not very good for PvE, so that's why I put them here. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I actually want to put Kraken here, but I'll explain more about Kraken later on, because Kraken is actually insanely good depending on how you look at it. So that's for the PvP centric. Like these units, I think they will be good for PvP, but not yet. Like you probably won't want to dump your resources into them yet. So let's move on to the subjective tier. So Sanya, I explained about her. I think generally speaking, good healer, but if you don't need a healer, you don't need to train her, right? If you're a better healer, you might not need to train her. So that's why she's here. Same note, we have the Chiaki. So this Chiaki has the ability to give you Origami Guardian, which increases the defense of your team and heal. So like, yeah, she does what a healer does, but like I mentioned, not a must in terms of team builds, and you have other options, and you have the free SSR Ling Luo, so that's why she's subjective. Kazuyo Reverie, very subjective. So she's used for Doki Doki as a control, and the cooldown on her ultimate is actually very nicely in sync, so that you are able to use the skill, and then your whole team starts to jam in a lot of damage with the removal of the damage reduction on Doki Doki minions, and then you cycle through your combo to control for the second wave. So her affinity is also really good for the boss, but for what she does, you have Kraken, you have Tiamat for the taunt, you have a lot of other good control units as well, which you can use. So I think she's relatively subjective. If you don't have the other better control units, I think you probably need to get her up a little bit. I think maybe 4 or 5 star, enough stats to survive, to cast a CC, and then have enough effect accuracy to get a CC off. I think that's good enough, right? But still relatively subjective. So like myself, I have a Kraken, so I'm using Kraken and I'm not using her, so that's why she's not a unit I'll build. But if you don't have Kraken, you don't have other CC, I think you can build her up to use for Doki Doki. So that's for the Reverie version of Kazuyo. Turandot, subjective. Dispel, attack defense buff, and turn meter down. I've seen her being used as a dispeller for some of the end game CBT contents against all the late game dungeon bosses where they have immunity. So you want to use the dispel to strip her. Sounds very wrong there, but you want to use the dispel to strip the immunity of the boss, right? But for this role, you have Mia, you have other dispellers available, and in terms of what she does as a buffer, attack and defense buff is okay, but probably not the best, right? You have crit rate up, speed up, you have crit damage, you have attack and speed up. So like I think there are better options than attack and defense buff. So depending on whether or not you need a dispeller, depending on whether or not you need a unit that can buff or dispel while having turn manipulation a little bit at the same time, you can train her up. So that's for Turandot. Yang is also subjective. Like very good buffer, buff up the crit for your whole team, and also give you some turn meter up. Subjective as well. So like whatever he does, whatever Turandot does, there are quite a few good options which are in the SSR category, which are usually recommended to train up, right? So that's why, like, if you have all those, then you don't have to train them. But if you don't have them, these are, I'll say, like the SR substitutes, not as strong but definitely replaceable. So that's for these two units. To be really honest, I'm going to put Victor here. So for those of you guys who do not know, this unit has insane late game damage. His damage scales up based off the lost HP. It used to be every 10%, 15% additional damage, but right now it's like 9% if I remember correctly, because it got nerfed really hard. So like it's subjective. I don't know how well he will perform in the late game. So like I don't recommend. Like if you have your Messiah, you have your Lien, or you're building other DPS up, I think yeah, you can pause on him first. But one thing good about this unit is a disorder attacker. So disorder and constant, they're pretty neutral in damage. So eventually if this unit's damage in the late game is still good, he'll probably be a really good all-rounder carries for all your different contents because of the affinity. So in the same vibe, subjective will be Grey. So don't get me wrong, I think Grey is an amazing damage dealer, and I personally train Grey up. I got him to 6-star. I also got his skills up, but Grey is relatively subjective because Grey as a DPS has other substitutes, right? You have your Messiah, you have Remoja in the same affinity, right? You have other DPS that you want to build up. But in most cases, if you do have Remoja and you want a holo DPS which is able to do a little bit of everything, okay, I'm gonna put Grey up there. Yeah, like I think in terms of what he does as a green attacker, probably the second best right now. So yeah, highly recommend. So sorry Grey, I apologize for putting you in subjective. So there's one more unit which I want to put in subjective, and that's Obo. So the thing about Obo and our Fungus right here, they're both DOT centric units, but I think as a standalone unit, Fungus can function as a standalone DPS, whereas Obo has control, has DOT, but generally speaking, you would actually prefer him in a DOT team in most cases. That's where he shines the most. So very niche, but depending on how you look at him, he has a dispel as well, if I remember correctly. So depending on whether or not you need what he does for the team, DOT with that dispel, etc., then you can definitely train me out. But I don't think he's a priority because Shadow Sanya got shadow nerfed in Aurora boss fight. So DOT still usable, just not like, oh yeah, I'm gonna dominate everything kind of thing. So that's that for Obo right here. Subjective. Like I think you can train him if you like his kit. You need him for what he does, you can train him, but if not, don't bother. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Okay, so next let's move on to the highly recommend tier. Pardon me, my throat's a little dry, so let me grab some water. So for the highly recommended tier, I think I spoke about Fungus and Grey already. I think these units, they are just pretty good as a damage dealer in terms of what they do. So like I'll surely highly recommend them in the event you need specific DPS of that affinity. So Fungus is red, Grey is green. So that's for these two DPS over here. Deting, highly recommend. So this unit scales into the late game with a lot of crit rate. He converts crit rate into crit damage. Whatever excess crit rate he has is converted into crit damage, and he has a lot of boss sniping potential. So you can use him for sniping in your Termaton. I think you can use him for sniping in Aurora as well in the mega late game. So you need a lot of crit damage, you need a lot of crit rate. So the late game, I'll say heavy carry from the Disorder faction. So I guess if you have him built up and you do have support for PvP with his damage output, you can also use him in PvP as well. So I'll strongly recommend people to train him to prepare him for like the late gameish Teramaton or for your late gameish PvP in general. So that's for Deting. Yeah, Kraken, highly recommend in my honest opinion, because this unit is a good CC unit because he has 2 CCs, one in AoE, one in single target, and he has defense down. So generically speaking, Doki Doki is good. Any content where you can abuse his CC with, for example, like the likes of Marvel, as well as units that give you cooldown reduction, is insanely amazing with him. So you're just able to throw out the CC and freeze the opponent, and then watch them freeze in place, and then do nothing there. Very, very good stuff. I've been using him a lot. I use him in all the past CBTs, and I'm also using him right now on my main account on the global server. So very, very good stuff. So that's for the highly recommended tiers. So pretty good stuff if you do build them up. depends on whether or not you need them for what they do. So that's for these units. Now for the mass train tier, so I think Dina needs no explanation. This is the best debuffer on the SR category right now, with the defense down as well as the crit damage up, even though she got nerfed a little bit, but still very usable against a lot of the green affinity bosses like Aurora, like Terramaton, and in general pretty speedy as well. So to a certain extent you can run her in PvP to get the debuff off and then let your DPS go ham in damage. So that's for Diana over here. Valerian, this unit is pretty sick. So I would say she's more of a buffer healer type of unit rather than just being a pure healer, because if you compare her in terms of the heal numbers, she's not as good as the likes of Sanya or Chucky, right, or even Lingluo, but she has the ability to redistribute HP and also buff your ally and also give you that invincibility, which could be good in very niche situations and even PvP. So very good support all around. Like, you will see more and more of her as we progress in the game, and right now I'm really seeing more use of her for some of the PV contents already. So stay tuned, this unit will start to see more use and eventually you have to train her up. So that's for Valerian. And then last but not least, Chucky. So Chucky, I would say in some people's eyes is actually highly recommended because, first of all, in the speed control category you have Marvel, right? You have Lily, you have Mia, you have a lot of good speed control unit like Tsukuyomi as well. But the Chucky right here is one of the easiest to build up, and her turn manipulation is actually really good, with the ability to buff up attack every single turn, although the attack is a little bit RNG based. So generally speaking, her ultimate is very spammable because you can upgrade it to level 5 with very little pressure, because the purple lattice is a lot more accessible. And in terms of what she does, the speed tuner role, there's always going to be some use for it, right? In PvP, let's say if the opponent takes Marvel, you take a Lily, opponent takes a Mio, you still have a Chucky right here in your arsenal. So this is where having Chucky built up eventually will be a thing for your account, even for RTA use as well. So pretty good unit that will eventually be a must train in most cases. So right now, I think a lot of people are not seeing use for her because we have Mio, number one of the new speed control unit, and we have Lily as well, Weaver and Marvel. So to a certain extent, Marvel sort of limited her usage by a lot because I think Marvel is just a lot better in terms of the speed tuning side. But Chucky as a general buffer and a speed tuner or turn meter tuner is also pretty decent. And eventually, if you want more varieties in terms of your speed tuning unit, she'll become a must train anyway. So that's pretty much it for all the SR units in the current meta, and hopefully, as usual, this is clear in terms of explaining and breaking down all the different users of the different units. And thank you very much for tuning in. Do remember to like and subscribe to see more. I will see you guys again in my next video. Bye guys.